So, how to growth hack your following using other people's influence. And by the way, I'm going to tell you later how you can tap into big influencers' audience without them even knowing about it. But first, let me talk about this example that I like quite a bit. So, Danny Miranda has made a name for himself as one of the most popular podcasts in the business category. It's actually, I really like the podcast. It's really good if you don't know it yet. And what exactly is Danny's secret? How did he manage to do that? By the way, I created a blueprint for the best business model out there, so check the description. So basically, his strategy is to find big influencers in his niche. And before you drop off, I will tell you some specific ways how you can actually growth hack into getting those influencers, and what I mentioned at the beginning, even going beyond that without tapping into the influence without even them knowing about it. So with Danny Miranda, I don't think he actually had any business before that. I think he basically just started the podcast, and that's basically his business now. So most of the people that would talk about their, if you're running a business podcast, you talk about your own business, your own experiences, things like that. But he basically just interviews other creators. And as you can see, actually on episode 39, he already managed to get Gary Vee on his podcast, which is pretty crazy. And that obviously is part of why he was so successful, because he managed to get all of these big names. By the way, I have created a document of 50 best growth hacks used by the biggest marketers out there. Check the link below. So the way this works is, well, first of all, you ask them for an interview. However, obviously, if you are a small creator, small business, whatever you are, big names might not be that interested. So what you need to do, you need to basically create an irresistible offer why they should come on your podcast. What do they actually get? You need to sell yourself to them. So one thing is obviously, okay, you can tell them you're going to reach new audience. Perhaps these are people that are going to buy their products, their services, whatever it is. One thing you can do, for example, you can think a little bit outside the box. So you can do something like, you can tell them you will create social media material. So let's say someone comes on my podcast and I don't have a following yet. I can say, hey, I'm going to take clips. I'm going to get my editor to edit those clips with, all the different text, animations, all of those kind of things, so they can go super viral. They have the viral potential for social media. And you're going to get, let's say, 20 clips out of this podcast. I'm going to do all of this work for you. So now, even I have no following, you are pretty likely to come on this podcast, because you're actually just getting a bunch of content for yourself out there, and you don't need to put in any work or effort. So it actually sounds like a great deal. So these are sort of one of the things. I'm not going to go into crazy list of the things you can do. If you want, let me know, I'll tell you some more. But this is one of the things how you get these big creators without having the big following yourself. And let's talk some benefits, why this is one of my favorite things and why I think this is really underrated. So first of all, you have SEO discoverability. And this is actually one of the things that you should think. Some of these points I'm going to talk about, this is what you need to think about when you choose what creators you're getting, because sometimes you might just chase the numbers. Who is the biggest creator, has the biggest following? However, let me tell you why sometimes you might want to approach this slightly differently. So let's say when someone searches for a specific creator, they are going to basically discover your content through that. And I know this is how I find most of the podcasts. When I really find someone interesting, I will literally search for every single podcast with that person. So what you can do is basically, let's say right now, if we look at Gary Vee, I know for a fact Gary is on a lot of different podcasts. He has done a bunch of different episodes. And while there's, let's say, a high search volume, people looking up podcasts with Gary Vee, what you can do is you can find someone who doesn't have as high of a search volume for their name, but sometimes it might be even too low for it to appear on Google, but that people will be looking for this creator, and perhaps they have not been on any other podcasts. So now basically you can have that SEO traffic because you don't really have any other competition. So just think about it kind of the same as if you're writing an SEO blog post, creating YouTube video, competition versus the search volume. So the other great benefit beyond just traffic, when you do these interviews, this can lead to great connections with some really important people. So this is just this additional benefit that a lot of people don't really think about, but if you ask anyone who does podcasts, they always say that this is actually the main benefit from doing a podcast. And then another thing is social sharing. So this is something that I would keep in mind when doing a podcast as well. By the way, this doesn't just have to be a podcast. This can be a piece of content that you're creating on social media. Let's say you're creating like a carousel type of content about like a specific creator, like a mini interview type of thing. It doesn't just have to be audio or video podcast, but basically you want to see how when you're interviewing, choosing the person to interview, you want to see if they're likely to share that content to their own audience. So the way you can do that is basically just go on the podcast, go check out the podcast that they have been on before and see if they actually shared it. Or sometimes you can even ask, but I wouldn't go as far because then it kind of might look like you're only doing it because you want to tap into their audience. And I would say honestly, for me, if someone shares my content, they interview me, they share my content in some sort of way, reshare my Instagram post, whatever it is, I am more than happy to reshare that with my audience. It's basically just social proof for me, and vast majority of the people are going to reshare the content with their audience. So what you want to do as well is you want to then check out, okay, what is their social media following? If I'm trying to grow on Instagram, do they have a big Instagram audience? If I'm trying to go on Twitter, do they have big Twitter audience? If I'm trying to grow on LinkedIn, what does their LinkedIn look like? And also, aside from that, basically certain content probably performs better on certain platforms. So for example, what I said is, let's say it depends how you approach this, but if I am talking with this influencer and they're a big influencer and I promise them, okay, I'm going to create social media materials for you. I'm going to create maybe, let's say, viral potential-ish clips for Instagram. Now I'm kind of interested, okay, because Instagram has a feature where it allows you to collab with other creator. So then my post is being shared automatically with that creator's audience, and I'm tapping into this massive audience. So that is a crazy opportunity. So some creators, they might have no Instagram following, but some might have huge Instagram following. So then if I'm doing this where I'm creating maybe social media content for them, then I might look into people who have big Instagram following. At the same time, let's say the reshares on Instagram are not as powerful, but if I'm creating like carousels still work on Instagram, you can repost it together. But if the creator, let's say, doesn't want to repost it as a collab together, then perhaps, but they will still reshare it, then perhaps Twitter or LinkedIn is a better option than them resharing it on their Instagram story. The LinkedIn, Twitter actually works better in some of those cases. So these are just some of the things that you need to take into consideration. So what I promised at the beginning, the growth hack that works really well, and I don't see enough people using this, and I actually kind of don't even want to give it away because it is so good. But anyway, we'll give it away. We'll give everything away. So what you want to do is you want to contact people who work for the influencer. So first of all, one thing that I really like about this is that those people might actually know more about the topic than the actual influencer. If you think about it, let's say Gary Vee, right? He has huge social media following, and because of that, people assume that he knows all the ins and outs. But really, when you're at that level, you're working with the big picture type of stuff. You're not really down there in the trenches figuring out, okay, what are the best hooks for Instagram, how exactly is the algorithm reacting to this or that thing, what are the specific editings, different tricks that you can use. Gary Vee is not doing that kind of stuff. He's not even thinking about that kind of stuff. But people who work for him, they are thinking about this stuff. So you actually can get way better material from those people. And obviously, they are more likely to actually respond. They probably don't really get that many inquiries, if any at all. But, so they are so much more likely to respond rather than this big influencer. However, the thing is, because they work for that influencer, that big figure, authority, whatever you want to call them, you probably can still use the influencer's name. So you might have seen some of these videos on YouTube. Let's say you can do something like the man behind the social media of Alex Hormozi. There was something like the paid media behind, like the guy responsible for paid media behind this or that, insert the big brand or the big influencer, authority figure, whatever it is. And low-key, this kind of works even better than actually just interviewing the influencer, because it's a little bit more creating curiosity. Because if I say, oh, the man behind the growth of the social media, now, oh, okay, like, let's say I've heard a lot of Alex Hormozi talking about social media, but oh, this is the guy who's responsible for that actual growth. Like, to me, at least personally, that creates a lot more curiosity for me. I'm a lot more likely to click on that video rather than actually an interview with Alex Hormozi. And this leads me to the next point, which is basically that this can create a different angle that might even work better. So what I mean by that is, aside from just the curiosity part, also, if let's say I interview Gary Vee, right? Gary Vee, as I mentioned, Gary Vee, let's say Alex Hormozi, these like big names in the field, there's a bunch of different interviews already existing. So I need to either find some unique angle, or if I have, instead of Gary Vee interview, I have people who have worked for Gary Vee. Now, instead of, 50 interviews with Gary Vee, there's only one that's talking with the team of Gary Vee. So people who are interested in Gary Vee, I have way better chance them to come to my content rather than one of those 50 interviews. So that's the unique, different angle about this, that basically just allows you to differentiate yourself from all of the competition while still basically getting the influence from that specific person's brand and name.